Good morning. My name is Dr. Jim Weldon. I'm speaking to you today from North Carolina in a community directed towards spiritual growth called Heavenly Mountain, to begin a work, an autobiography, the second book. The first one was Living the Enlightened Life. The second main title is The Rise of the First World Teacher. It's the second book in this series on my autobiography, and there are links to all of this on YouTube, or you can listen to the earlier chapters, and these current ones will be posted there shortly. I do appreciate you taking the moment to hear a little bit about this. So, beginning the second phase of this amazing story. So this first chapter begins with a prayer, a poem, and the title is All My Prayers Are the Same. Sometimes I feel that the prayers of many living beings, like a chorus about me, as one song, saying, "Where are you, my beloved? I'm lost and unhappy, and I can't find my way home." Behind all these prayers, I hear another song calling back, saying, "Don't you hear me? Don't you see me? I'm right here, my dear, right beside you, and all around you, and within you forever. So dry your tears, don't cry, my dear. Just wake up, for it's all a play. It's all just a fun. Come and see that I'm closer than your own breath." So it's the year 1992. And it's 6 a.m. on a fall morning at my Colorado home in the mountains in the United States, a little town called Nederland. And the sunlight is just beginning to peek over the horizon and shooting out tiny streaks of like cotton candy filling the sky. And the rays reach out, grasping the purple mountains in an endless embrace. Outside, the aspen trees are changing to a golden yellow. They actually talk. If you ever listen to trees when the wind is blowing, they all actually have a separate sound. Try that sometime. And the aspen trees have a specific sound as they move in the wind. And I really love this time of the morning. This is the time for my silence. This is time for me to meet the divine within me in meditation. In closing my eyes, I begin my daily program. And the mantra or sound that I received in initiation so long ago is as powerful as ever. That sound that I was using for my vehicle of meditation. Now even more powerful as my awareness is dropping deeper and deeper into the well of bliss deep within me. Quickly I forget who I am, where I am, and what I am, as I dissolve into nothingness and everything. And bliss rolls through my body in huge waves, like the surf pounding on the shore, and gradually even this awareness disappears. And I'm drawn deeper and deeper into the darkness, the void beyond. This is not the darkness of closed eyes. Rather, it's the emptiness beyond this world, a lively nothingness filled with all the possibilities of life. And abruptly, a white light appears in the center of that darkness, emanating radiance, like a flare going off in the pitch of night. You know, I'm blinded and shaken by this sudden upsurge of energy. And a halo appears around a face, a personality that I cannot see, but I know it's there nevertheless. A powerful being stands there beyond my ability to grasp. And the awareness that I feel, yet I cannot see fully, is so vast that my mind trembles as if it was struck by lightning. The consciousness before me is shrouded in a timeless mystery, veiled from my inner sight, yet the strength that flows to me from this awareness fills every pore of my being with complete understanding. Then a pair of eyes appear. I know this is a living being before me, not just a spiritual presence, but a physical presence also I'm feeling. A master consciousness, but I can't fathom who it can be. I can't see beyond those eyes, but I still know I've met someone extraordinary. You know, I've felt great beings on the subtle before. Rarely have I met such personalities in the physical world. And I know that the personalities of the great ones are just flavors of one vast enlightened mind consciousness containing us all. And behind them all is the teacher of teachers. You know, what is so extraordinary is the disposition I feel. It's so intimate, as if this being belongs completely to me. The image fades from my awareness, but I remember those eyes. You know, kind of seeing. You can't see my eyes, but if I take off my glasses, maybe you can see. Those eyes I will never forget. The scene changes, and now sometime later, I'm standing at the Denver International Airport with a group of about 10 friends, waiting to meet an Indian saint on tour throughout the United States and Canada. And Boulder, Colorado, is near my home in the mountains, is a mecca for such teachers. Almost every spiritual groups in the United States and the world has a center here. And I enjoyed the spiritual diversity in the community. In addition to my drive to live in the mountains, kind of reflects what I think was my past life in Tibet. That's a whole nother story. You can go to these earlier links to hear some of that. And this is actually the reason I first came to Boulder in the first place. The town has a reputation of being environmentally and ethically and spiritually open. Yet tragedies happen here too. Obviously, everywhere. About 20 minutes before the saints arrive, a huge wave of spiritual energy sweeps through the room, as if all the atoms in our body are doubling their vibratory energy in a few moments. And I watch as people sit down, actually literally dazed by the activity, the energy that they're feeling. No one seems to realize the sudden change of life force in the room. And I wonder, is this accident? Is it connected to the personality arriving? Could such spiritual power manifest at such a distance? My curiosity deepens. And the exit door of the plane finally opens. And the teacher, Sri Ravi Shankar, steps into the airport. A breeze, a cloud of purity fills the room as he moves along. Long jet black hair, silk robes, and light bouncy steps. Everyone is all smiles. Sri moves through the group, greeting old friends. He passes and looks my way, and our eyes meet. And time freezes for a few moments as I look closer. And I gaze into those eyes, and I remember the feeling. This is the intimate feeling and the gaze I saw a few weeks ago in meditation. Now the face is added to those eyes. You know, I'm so stunned. This is so familiar somehow. And tears come to my eyes as I follow along. And there's a picture in the book here about Sri Ravi Shankar, which you could find everywhere on the internet now. You know, I'm amazed at how much he actually resembles Maharishi in his youth. I have a photo of a young Maharishi in my meditation room that could easily be mistaken for Sri. Sri is definitely thinner, yet I feel as if I'm standing with the Maharishi again. 2 weeks ago, I discovered Sri actually quite by accident. I'm visiting a friend of mine, Lawrence, who has recently moved to Boulder, Colorado, USA. We were in a holistic practice together in Iowa at the university there a decade earlier. And in his sparsely furnished apartment was a photo of Sri, standing by the Maharishi, quite young. And I look at this and I know this face somehow. And I wonder, who is this? I ask. And over the next 20 minutes, I glean the details from Sri's life. From a very early age, he shows an advanced spiritual nature. As a child of 3, he's often found, 3 or 4, he's found with his eyes closed, sometimes for hours wrapped in deep meditation. The story goes that at 4, he knows fully the stanzas of the Bhagavad Gita, to the amazement of his teachers. This is very difficult, even for an adult, since, you know, it's in Sanskrit. And one day as he passes through a large crowd in India, and the Maharishis come, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi picks the adept Ravi as a young teen boy to be with him, saying, "You'll be with me." And Sri, only a child, has supposedly told his parents a day early that the Maharishi will be becoming and being his master. And as I drift back in time, I wonder, you know, I think I saw Sri long ago in Switzerland. That amazing time in 1976 when Muktananda visited Maharishi. Perhaps I did, but I'm not positive. He was there somehow. Maharishi takes the young Ravi with him throughout India at these early days, including visits to many saints, introducing him. And one of these saints says, "Ah, Baba, you have brought me the river Ganges," proclaims one of India's most beloved female saints at this time, Anandamaya Ma, as Maharishi presents the young boy. "You've brought me the one who will wash away the ignorance of the world," she says. And she predicts that Ravi will someday be a world-famous spiritual master. Anandamaya Ma, oh my goodness. If you ever get a chance to read about her, let me take a side story here for a moment. This is an unbelievable great saint in India. She was so totally absorbed in the inner being. They almost had to carry her from place to place, and she was so much on the very edge of the highest states of consciousness that they would have to feed her because she wouldn't think about doing this. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, amazing being. And if you get a chance to see some pictures of her, which I have in my book, also online, just unbelievable, just unbelievable. And I know this consciousness, that's a whole nother story. I won't get to that now. So Maharishi met with Sri Sri met with Maharishi for 13 years earlier, directing, and he began to direct the major portions of his teaching, especially a school for young Vedic scholars' children. At 21, Sri Sri undergoes a dramatic awakening, and self-realization comes really easily. And new methodologies, the knowledge of how to bring others quickly into higher states of consciousness. Shortly thereafter, he begins teaching these techniques, and apparently is separated on his own from the TM organization. And the teaching had been going on for over a decade in many parts of the world. Yes, I'm interested in seeing that, but mostly curious, because I've seen a number of spiritual teachers over the years, and they're nice to meet and fun to see. However, if you have taken the time to read a little bit about my past, I always seem to, end up going my own way somehow. But Lawrence's outline, Lawrence Conlon outline makes me really curious. And when Sri Sri comes to town, I decide I'm going to go meet him. And his visit is 2 weeks away. As the day of his visit approaches, I'm a little uncertain, unsettled, even anxious. Why should I feel moody about a teacher that I've never apparently physically met? And 2 days before Sri Sri's visit, I fuss over a short letter that I want to give him. And briefly, I explain the book one, that I'm writing about the gift of pragya, Tirthambar pragya, that I received long ago. I'm still absolutely amazed by those times. Perhaps he can give me some insight. And I also include a poem about Maharishi I wrote several years ago. And Lawrence, who kind of introduced me to Sri Sri this way, gives him a picture of me, the letter, and a poem on the way from the airport. I'm too shy. I'm standing in the background. I also ask in the letter if the Art of Living course he teaches may be of use to me. Should I take it? And after reading my letter and poem, Sri Sri's only comment is, has he taken the course? And Lawrence tells me Sri Sri's response. How funny this reply is. Sri Sri knows that I've not taken the course, but I explained that in my letter, but yet he says, has he taken the course? I asked for direction, and it seems Sri Sri has found a very little clever way to encourage me to take the program without actually telling me what to do. Maybe he knows the hard-headed character of me, and I find this really amusing. And my wife and I arrived that night at the Boulderado Hotel for Sri Sri's public talk. And the room was almost full with several hundred people when we arrived. And I enjoyed the lecture, but I only discovered that only a very few are interested in taking the course. Sri Sri spends about 45 minutes in the hall, and then he leaves. And true to Sri Sri's rather innocuous suggestion, my wife and I and a few others are curious about the Art of Living. It's called the Healing Breath Workshop at this point. David Longnicker, Brian, and a few other local teachers that are teaching this, and my friend Lawrence Conlon, meet us after the talk to talk about the program. And the technique there, that one of the techniques that is taught in this course is called the Sudarshan Kriya. That interests me. From what I gather, it uses the breath in a very unique way to spiritually charge and heal the mind, body, and emotion. And David Longmaker, still a very good friend of mine, explains the technique. Sudarshan Kriya means right vision. Sudarshan means right vision. Kriya means purifying action. In the Sudarshan Kriya, we use the breath to purify the system and give a vision of the oneness behind everything. And the practice takes about 20 minutes. And many advanced meditators have taken the Sudarshan Kriya and found that it accelerates their spiritual practices. You know, I think about this. I know something about Kriyas. The spiritual energy that leads me through yoga spontaneously in the earlier chapters shows some Kriyas to me. And my friend Lawrence, a chiropractor, knows about the breath work. It's central actually in his practice also. And he says this is something far beyond any specific breathing or meditation technique, something that I've ever seen. It's greater, he's saying. And it's difficult to explain how it works. He says you should just do it and see for yourself. And Brian, another one of the teacher, continues. He says, the breath is the most basic and also perhaps the most ignored aspect of our life. Scientists say about 80 to 90% of the physical toxins leave through the breath, but we're using only about 30% of our breathing capacity. And the old masters knew about the importance of the breath and its relationship to the essential life force, also called prana. With every breath, we draw this subtle energy into our mind and body and mind. And the prana is the essential energy actually contained in food also. Even the essence of the love we receive from others is in the form of prana. I look over at Lawrence, and he knows that I do have sometimes some subtle perception. And he asked me to share what I feel could be standing in the way and causing his particular problems. So he's also in a challenging time in his life. And I remembered our meeting a year earlier, and I see that his heart is full of love, shooting out with rays in all directions. But I also see an emptiness there. Some darkness blocking his perception and somehow distorting that manifestation of love. This is nothing new. I felt this emptiness consuming some of his energy when we first met over 10 years earlier. And I'm not saying that I don't have some of that too. Of course, we all do. And I said, I can't help you much. I only know of one power capable of removing such a block. And this is the divine force which has transformed my life. And I feel for him at this time, this pain for him is good. Certainly in my own life, such longing comes before a major transformation. And I say, perhaps one is coming for you. So after Lawrence has returned from the airport to meet Sri, I see a definite change. Somehow the sorrow that I'd seen in my friend's heart seems to have gone, just like that, boom. And Lawrence's heart is now surging with golden bright light, like a little miniature sun. Rays of hope, confidence, and divine love are radiating out everywhere. And I ask, what happened to you? And Lawrence answers, driving back with Sri from the airport this evening, I shared my anguish. He bopped me on the head with a flower. And by the time we arrived in the hall, all my worry vanished. It's just what automatically happens around him. And I look around at Dave and Brian for the response, and they're not surprised at all. Apparently, this is absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. Now I'm more interested, more than interested. Okay, I'll give it a try. Let's see what Sri Sri teaches. And I decide to take the Art of Living Healing Breath workshop. And Sri Sri leaves town for the next day. And my wife and I wait the following weekend for the course taught by David and Brian. So we traveled across the entire United States, come to Boulder, Colorado, to give this talk. And my wife and 4 others, 6 of us, that's it, began the course. And it starts on a Friday evening and runs Saturday, Sunday all day, and then Monday evening, a follow-up. And Lawrence is really right. The program is powerful, and the Sudarshan Kriya is definitely unique. But somehow it's so familiar. I'm surprised that the yogic breathing techniques taught can actually make such a difference in my experience. It's if all the methods are supercharged and drawing spiritual energy into my body. And the knowledge seems so familiar, comfortable somehow. And I remember even way, way back from 1976, I had done something similar in my spontaneous yogic practices. But, this is more powerful. Please excuse me, the energy is coming up in my body here as I'm talking about this. It's coming up. It's nice to feel the boost in my experiences. And after the course, we meet weekly for a practice. And a series of revelatory dreams and dramatic peak experiences continued for weeks before and after this first course in my meeting with Sri Sri. In one experience, I wake from a deep sleep to find myself in an auditorium looking around. This is in the Turiya state between waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And looking around, I see there are thousands of people here from different nationalities, all separated into groups. And Maharishi is sitting on the stage, and he rises and motions me to, and a few others to follow him through a portal, through a door. And a number of us from each group in that hallway stand and pass through a passage, leaving the hall with him. And ahead, Maharishi steps up on a second stage, and we follow him to our seats. And I glance up from the stage just as Maharishi turns around to sit down. And before my eyes, Maharishi metaphors changes into Sri Sri. Maharishi's gone, Sri Sri's there, and he sits down. And I'm directed to a seat. He says, you sit right up here up front. And I'm really reluctant to take it and sit down nearby on the floor instead. He says, here's a chair up on the stage. And I said, no, I'll sit down on the floor. And my wife and I both awake almost at the same instant back at our house in Colorado. And she shares her dream. It's virtually identical to mine. What does this mean? Apparently now I'm to follow this new path. And my curiosity obviously continues to be aroused. I think I'll go visit Sri Sri again. Perhaps clarity about the meaning of my vision. I'm still wondering about what I saw with Muktananda coming back apparently in the world. And a lot of other things that are really wonders in my life. And checking with David Longninger, my Art of Living teacher, I discovered that Sri Sri is now gone to Switzerland, but I hear that a week later he canceled. He was going to Switzerland, he canceled that and came back to the United States for an advanced course, actually in Pittsburgh. And so with a few days notice, everything all falls into place, and my wife and I make arrangements to go. And I anticipate perhaps more revelations there with what had happened in the last few weeks. A week before the course, something else develops. I start to become really interested in music. I enjoyed music, and I start to play an Indian drum called a dholak. And the Art of Living groups likes to sing at events. So I take a one-day drumming course at the local Siddha Yoga centers of Guru Maharaj Chit Balasananda. And during the lunch break, I feel an impulse to drop by a local drum shop. And there in the window is a beautiful hand-carved drum. I've never seen anything like it. And during the days before the Pittsburgh course from, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., I continue to work on my story in my book, the first version during the breaks, and practice on the drum. And I really can't hold a drum beat for more than a few seconds, but it doesn't matter. Somehow just holding the drum is enough for me. And when we arrive for the Pittsburgh course, I hide the drum in my luggage so my wife can't see it. I feel a little silly taking a drum that I can't even play, but I have to do it. The last few weeks have been wild. They've been crazy, but really a lot of fun. And at 10 p.m., actually the night before the course, the first draft of this book at that time, called The Revelations of The Revelations of Amazement. I couldn't think of a title. It was personally for me. It's printed. And at 7 a.m. the next morning, with all our bags in hand and my drum hidden in my baggage, I carried 2 copies of the work with me. I'm ready to go. So I won't hold you in anticipation, but I'm going to hold you in anticipation, because we're going to continue to the next episode. Now stay with me, come back in a few moments and hear about, wow, what happens in Pittsburgh on that weekend. And those of you that have had a chance to take some of these programs, you know what I'm talking about. So hold on soon. I'll be back for another episode 27 from the second book of my autobiography. And the title is The Rise of the First World Teacher. I don't use these words lightly. It may seem amazing, but this is just my own story. And I really feel a responsibility to let people know that there really does exist such beings in this world. And ultimately, you are one of those. You already are. You are. I am. We are. But we just need a little guidance, a little help along the way. We're so much stronger together than we are alone. So join us in episode 28. It'll be coming up shortly. See you in a few minutes.